Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Manning, and this is the Liberty's Last Refuge podcast. And today we are going to switch from the political that I've done in the last couple of segments, and we are going to move back to college football. And the reason for that is the SEC and the Big 10 are trying to screw up the playoffs, the expanded playoffs that we haven't even started yet. So reports came out within the last week that the SEC and the Big 10, who believe that they are somehow different, elite, special, should be granted automatic buys and three automatic qualifying positions in a not 12-team playoff, but now a 14-team playoff. So we haven't even gotten the 12-team expanded playoff that we're going to play in the upcoming season. And Greg Sankey is already trying to screw everyone in college football over. So I wanted to go ahead and address that. And I wanted to talk about what I actually think the expansion should look like. And if you have followed my page, if you are one of the 5 original people who followed me on this podcast, you know that I was talking about BYU and Texas football, predominantly BYU. But I have been advocating and pushing for a 16-team playoff for several years now. And I kind of want to go into detail and obviously drag Greg Sankey a little bit because I think he's absolutely, while he is an asset for the SEC, he is a complete detriment for college football as a whole, and particularly the playoff system. Now, obviously, with this last year's mergers, the Big 12, the collapse of the Pac-12, the most of the Pac-12 going to either the Big 10 or the Big 12. Next year's going to be a little bit interesting, and unfortunately, we are trying to screw up what could be a great thing, a playoff system for the Division I football. And this is something that football fans have been denied for the last several decades because of some of the dumb assumptions and some of the dumb arguments that those who are in power, particularly those commissioners of the P5, like Greg Sankey, wield over the sport. And I want to kind of open people's eyes to the destruction and the harm that these two conferences are doing to college football as a whole. Now, I'm going to make the argument for why a 16-team playoff is actually the best and why it makes the most sense. And we need to stop pretending that this level of college football is somehow unique from every other division of college football, that it is somehow unique and different from every level of football. From the time that we are from Pee-wees up to the NFL, for some reason, we got it trapped in our brains that this is the only level in football anywhere in the world for any age group that can't have a legitimate playoff system because of reasons. So I'm a little bit pretending to be heated up. You know, we get it. I'm not that heated about it, but it makes it a little bit more fun. So let me go ahead and let's dispel the myth that the G5 does not deserve any more than a single playoff spot. All right. So this is something that I love. In no other sport, across college sports, do we say that half of the teams have no opportunity to play for a national championship or get an invite into the playoffs. Now, the most similar playoff system that we have, it would be, I'm going to liken to college basketball. Now, obviously, with college basketball, there are over 300 programs at the D1 level that play college basketball. So you have 300 and something teams. It's massive. Whereas at the FBS football division, you only have 134 teams. So significantly different. Now, obviously, with March Madness and college basketball, you get 64 teams. Now, really, it's 68 because we've got multiple buy-ins, so you get 4 teams who get a shot to play into the tournament. But we're just going to keep it at 64. Now, with 64 teams, that's close to like 18% of all of the teams in college basketball get to make the playoffs. And baseball has the same thing where you have, I believe it's either 32 or 64 teams as well who get to play. This is true in basically every other sport. Soccer has it, particularly in the women's soccer, because there's not a whole lot of men's soccer programs anymore. But in those programs where you still have 100 or more teams at the division, you're seeing at least 16 teams go to the playoff. Now, with 134 teams in a 16-team playoff, you're still getting less than 15% of teams in college football who actually get to play for the national championship. But we want to limit it to just 4 divisions now. Only the supposed P4, and then we're going to give the other 5 conferences, the G5 conferences, we're going to give them a single spot. Okay, those G5 conferences represent close to half of all of the teams in college football. So you're saying that 50% of the teams in college football get a single slot, a single opportunity in a year for a playoff bid? Because let's be real, the only team that's going to be in the top 12 in the nation is going to be probably the best G5 champion. And even then, it'll be rare that they get up that high. So I'm going to lay out the format of a 16-team playoff that we should have, and I'm going to show you that this would be amazing, and it is what we should be pushing for, and the format that we should do it in. So bear with me. And so the first thing we're going to do a little history lesson to debunk one of the myths that the G5 teams, the G5 champions, should only get a single representative because the other teams aren't good enough. All right, so being the data nerd that I am, I went and I put together a history of the G5 conference champions and where they ranked going after the conference championship, what their rank was in the AP. And I'm going to change screens here because that's probably a little bit small. So I'm going to let you not look at my ugly mug, and we're just going to look at the spreadsheet I got. Okay. So what we have here is I have the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years. So I went all the way back to 2012 of where the best teams from the G5 ranked. Now, in the last year, in 2023, here's the AP final rank. And I use the AP because, if you've heard me ramble on before, I hate the playoff selection committee. I think they are absolute garbage. It's a completely biased, small sample size of people who don't actually know college football, and they have no business at all deciding who should be playing in the playoffs, as the snub of Florida State this past year clearly shows. Now, the AAC champion was SMU, and they finished 17th. The Conference USA champion was Liberty, and they finished 18th. And the Sun Belt, if James Madison wasn't banned from playing in the postseason, they would have been 24th. But the actual Sun Belt champion was Troy, who was just outside the top 25 at 27. And so I have been arguing that at least 3, and now with the collapse of the Pac-12, it would be basically 4 and 4. The P4 champion, and then the next 4 highest rated conference champions would get the automatic qualifier into the playoffs. And the reason why I want this, I want the conference championship to mean something. I want there to be an incentive to win the conference championship. And if you win the conference championship, you get an automatic qualifier into the playoffs, and even more importantly, you get the home game in the first round of the playoffs. And so yes, this means that the G5 champion, Liberty, SMU, and Troy in the prior year, they would have gotten a home game in the playoff. And the reason for that is I want to build up college football as a whole. I'm not interested in making the Power 4 conferences even more powerful and more, I'd say, give them a greater difference in talent and skill and opportunity than the other half of college football. Again, as somebody who is advocating for what is best for college football as a whole and not any one conference or any one team. Now, in the prior year, Tulane, UTSA, and Troy were all in the top 25. In 21, it was Cincinnati, Louisiana, and UTSA, top 25. In 2020, it was Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, Buffalo, and San Jose State. In 2019, Memphis, Boise State, and Appalachian State. So for 5 years in a row, so 4 out of the 5 years, if we don't include James Madison, who would have been the Sun Belt champion and a top 25 team, 3 G5 champions have been ranked in the top 25. So we aren't getting the 30th and 40th best team like you will get in college basketball. We are getting the top 25 teams. So yes, I think that given the history, and particularly with the transfer portal and the more leveling of talent that we're going to have, because your high 3 stars and low 4 stars, they're not going to sit on the sidelines for 3 and 4 years anymore. They're going to go somewhere where they can play. And this expansion of the playoff would then give all of these G5 teams an opportunity to maybe get a little bit better talent. If you may get a playoff run, that could be magical for your team for years to come. And we always celebrate in college basketball when we have those lower ranks, the David beats Goliath. We love that as fans. It gets a lot more eyeballs from TV, and therefore we generate more revenue for these programs. And that's what I want to see. I want to see a little bit of a leveling in college football in the same way that a Wichita State has actually a chance to make it a deep run into the college basketball playoff. I would love to see a James Madison or a Liberty make it to the semifinals. That would be amazing, and it would be great for college football. Again, not great for the Big 12 or the SEC or the Big 10, but for college football as a whole. So now that we have eliminated the myth that the G5 champion should be limited to a single team because multiple G5 champions are placing in the top 25 at the end of the year, let's go ahead and actually take a look at what given this last year and the AP rankings, and I also found a mock BCS where, given those rankings, what a 16-team playoff would look like. All right, so this is the 16-team bracket that I put together. It's just I went and found some cheap PDF printable bracket at printyourbrackets.com. And I put together what the 16-team playoff would look like given the final standings after the conference championship of the AP. So I use the AP rankings in this system. Now, again, as I said, I want 8 conference champions. Now, in the prior year, obviously we had the Pac-12, which is now gone. I still want at least 7. Fine, you could talk me into a 7+9 system. As long as at least 3 of the G5 conferences, their conference champion gets in. That's fine. At least 3. If we still do an 8-8, I think that's better. In that case, then only 1 conference champion is going to be left out. And then you still have 8 at-large bids for some of the best teams. And you're going to have, on average, you're going to have the top 12 teams in the country every year in the playoff, because you'll have those conference champions plus the next 8 highest ranked. It'll be, there's nobody that's going to have a legitimate shot at the national championship then is going to be left off. But as I said, this is something that's better for college football. If you have every region, in essence, in the country and every small conference has an ability to, see their team possibly win a playoff game, you're going to get more eyeballs. That is big for revenue because let's be honest, unfortunately, college football has become, how can I get the most money out of this entity? And this is how you do it. You don't get a better product by excluding half of the country, half of the fan base, half of the college football fan base who are knowing that they'll never get a shot at a national championship. That isn't fair. That is not what college football should be about. That is not what any other sport in college is about. But we want to pretend that college football is some unique alien that is different from every other sport, when in reality, it just happens to be the sport that brings in the most money. If we're being honest, the vast majority of these players are never going to play in the NFL. Almost none of them are going to play in the NFL. It's a very small percentage. They are simply college athletes who get to play a game while they are in college. And we should remember and refocus on that and not pretend that this is just the NFL's D-League. That is not what college football is. Anyways, I digress. All right. So Michigan would have had the number 1 seed, and they would have played LSU. Think about that. You would have had Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, taking on Michigan. And that's a 16-1 upset possibility. Maybe Jaden Daniel plays out of his mind at Michigan. Again, this would be played at Michigan. And he leads LSU past Michigan, solidifying his status as a great Heisman candidate. That's an interesting matchup. Then we would have Washington at Oklahoma. You've got two of the most high-powered offenses going at it in Seattle. Again, that's an interesting game. I would watch that. The number 3 seed would have been Texas and Ole Miss. Here you got Lane Kiffin, an opportunity to go into Austin with Sark, and you have Quinn Ewers and Jackson Dart, two fantastic quarterbacks who are going to be playing again next year. And maybe we have a prequel to a matchup in the 12-team playoff system that we're going to have next year. That's, again, an interesting matchup in Austin. The number 4 seed would have been Florida State. The AP ranked them 4th, and they would have taken on Penn State. And now we get to see, was Penn State for real a top 10 team? I mean, they only lost to Michigan and Ohio State. Those were within their conference, but now we get to see them take on the Florida State team that lost their Jordan Travis, but still managed to win their final 2 games without him. And obviously, this would be a better game than the Florida State-Georgia game was, because you're not going to have 30 opt-outs. The players that are on that team have a shot at a national championship. They're not bailing. That also eliminates one of the biggest issues that we have now in college football with the bowl games is all of the good players on teams that don't get into the playoff, they have no incentive to stay and play. This creates the incentive for your teams that possibly are not going to win a national championship, but they stay for the bowl game. They stay for the playoffs. The number 5 seed is going to be Alabama, Missouri, and you go, oh, this is just a SEC rematch, but it's not. Alabama and Missouri didn't play in the regular season. They didn't play each other. So even though these are 2 SEC teams, these are 2 SEC teams that did not play each other during the regular season. They didn't play each other in conference. So it's not a rehash of a prior game. Then you have, and that's played at Alabama. Then you have SMU and Oregon. SMU was the next highest ranked champion. And Oregon would have gone into Dallas to play SMU. Again, Oregon probably smashes SMU, but SMU in the year before or now as a member, of one of the P4 now, they get a home playoff game. Again, not as interesting a matchup, but not everyone is going to be an amazing win. Then you'd have Liberty and Ohio State. Ohio State's got to travel to Liberty in this small school in Virginia, private school in Virginia, gets to host a playoff game. Think how big that is for this program that has only been doing college football for a little over a decade. That is a great storyline. Then you have James Madison in their second year at this division get a playoff game, and they get to play at home against Georgia. Now, Georgia's going to come in and wax James Madison probably pretty easily. All right, but now Georgia, who many of you thought should have been playing on the national championship, still has a shot because of our expanded playoff. Now, they don't get to play at home. They got to go to James Madison, but that's not really a tough ask for Georgia. And so that's what we would have had based on the AP. And just for fun, I went and got the old BCS from the BCS Know-How. And so this is their Twitter page. It's BCS Know-How. And they simulate what would have been the BCS. So the standings are a little bit different, but not much. Michigan would have played Louisville. They would have had the 16th seed. It would have been Washington versus Arizona. Okay, Arizona nearly knocked off Washington during the regular season, and now they get a shot in the playoffs. Now, it's in Washington, in Seattle, so that's a little bit difficult, but you get an interesting rematch of an Arizona team that came on hot with one of the best quarterbacks in Noah Fafita. That would have been an interesting rematch. The number 3 seed would have been Alabama and Ole Miss. Okay. Unfortunately, we get a little bit of a second game that has already been played during the regular season. But again, I'm not going to move rankings around just to avoid a rematch. Florida State would have taken on Missouri, so a little bit different. The number 5 seed would have been Texas, so it's Texas and Penn State. So Penn State would have traveled to Austin. You've got Liberty and Oregon still, and then SMU, Ohio State, James Madison, Georgia. So in those ways, those games didn't change. So you have a little bit of a different matchup. And then you get Alabama and Georgia on opposite sides of the bracket. And maybe those are the 2 teams that play through, and you get the Georgia-Alabama matchup that some of you in the SEC want. But then they have to get through all those other teams first. And so we get a real playoff system. And that's what I want. All right, so to tie this all together, I just wanted to highlight how I think college football should expand to 16 teams. I've been on this for years. I think that is the best thing to do for college football. It's not going to make Greg Sankey happy, and I don't really care. I'd actually love to see Greg Sankey go. I think he is doing everything he can to destroy college football. Now, he's doing it because that's his job as the SEC commissioner, and this is why I don't think he should have any say at all in the playoffs, because he has such a bias and he's ruining college football. And then you've got the television networks who really aren't helping out any. And this idea that college football at the bowl subdivision level is this weird alien from another planet that we need to not have a playoff system. Yes, we need a real playoff system. We need to have, if you win your conference championship, you get to go into the playoff. That's in essence what it should be. That's how every other sport is that has playoffs. That's how it is the most fair. It is what creates the most interest. It creates great storylines. We can have the David versus Goliath matchups, a James Madison versus Georgia. Yes, that's a great storyline. Does James Madison have a whole lot of opportunity or probability of winning? No. Does the 16 seed in the NCAA tournament have a very big chance of winning? No. But they get the game. And that's what we should see going forward. Again, my name is Chris Manning. This is Liberty's Last Refuge. If you like what I have to say, if you don't think I'm a complete loon, then I would ask that you please go ahead and like this video, subscribe, share this on all the social media. Share that for me. I would appreciate it. Just throw it on Twitter, throw it on Facebook, whatever you want. Like it on YouTube. I would appreciate it. Once again, I hope you all have a wonderful day. And go Cougs.